The tick-tick. It was supposed to be a regular summer break. I had some time off after a grueling school year at university, and I couldn't wait to just sit around and do nothing. That year, I decided to spend it at my cousin's house. She lives by the beach, so I figured it was a sweet deal to spend my whole summer just basking in the warmth by the sea. Another reason I was staying with her was because she was pregnant and she was all alone in her house for 2 whole months. Her husband was assigned to an overseas trip for 2 months, and it was her final trimester, so I figured I'd be of use if I stayed with her. Me and my cousin, Ella, were close. Our families were close, and we'd have sleepovers in each other's house. Ella was my first best friend, and it stayed that way, even if she was 4 years older than me. So I was really psyched to spend a relaxing summer break with her. I have been so busy with school work that I haven't been keeping in touch with Ella. And with her husband away, this felt like old times. It was gonna be a good summer. The first few weeks at her house was, as expected, extremely fun and relaxing at the same time. We were both so excited for her upcoming baby that we just about went overboard decorating the baby room. Pregnancy works so well with Ella. She was virtually glowing with joy, she was so happy with her baby. She's one of those rare women who have easy pregnancies. She didn't experience morning sickness, she stayed a healthy weight, and she was just extremely happy in general. I guess she just has the right balance of hormones. It was on my 3rd week at her house when strange things started to happen. It was a Thursday night, and I was out late. My boyfriend visited me for a couple of days, and we went out for dinner and a movie before he drove back to the city. Ella was alone at home, and resting. She was down to her last 2 months of pregnancy and her tummy was heavy, so she couldn't move around that much. It was pretty late already when I got home, around 1 a.m., so I was surprised when I saw that all the lights in the house were lit up, and the TV in the living room was blasting at full volume. Huddled on the couch, sleeping soundly, was Ella. I nudged her gently to wake her up so she could move to the bedroom. She woke up with a start and looked at me in fear for a few seconds, before she shook herself awake. "Ella, honey, why are you sleeping here? It can't be comfortable for you," I asked. She shook her head in embarrassment and said, "It's nothing, it's silly, really. I just managed to spook myself earlier." I tilted my head in inquiry, and she continued, "I was already in the bedroom, and preparing to sleep, when I heard a loud tapping by the windows. I knew you weren't home yet, so I got spooked, and I turned on every light in the house. I couldn't sleep in the room, so I went down to watch some TV. I guess I dozed off eventually, and now I feel stupid." I just smiled at her. Ella was always such a scaredy cat. I told her I'd sleep beside her, so she wouldn't be scared. She looked gratefully at me, and we went upstairs to her room. As we were dozing off, I heard a light tapping by the window. Thinking it was just my mind playing tricks on me, I ignored it at first. The tapping became louder and I looked towards the window. Weird, there weren't any trees beside the bedroom windows, so it couldn't be a stray tree branch. I didn't want to wake Ella up, so I couldn't stand up and investigate. The tapping sound got louder. I listened closely and realized it wasn't coming from the window, it was actually coming from the ceiling, or most likely, the roof. How strange. The tapping faded away eventually, so I finally fell asleep. The next morning, I woke up to find Ella still sleeping soundly beside me. I went down to prepare coffee, and as the coffee grounds were brewing, I saw something weird on the walls of the living room, beside the front door. The house was always so neat and put together, that anything out of the ordinary was immediately strange. I walked closer to the wall, and saw that they were dark brownish smears. Like someone took a broom, dipped it in dark brown paint, and haphazardly smeared it across the walls. I tried rubbing it off the walls, and sniffed the stain. It had a faintly metallic smell. With a sense of horror, I realized they were blood smears. I immediately went to the room to check if Ella was okay and if she was bleeding. She was still sleeping soundly, and she didn't have any blood around her. I'm sure she would have told me if she had any bleeding. Refusing to disturb her slumber, I went back down, and took photos of the blood smears, then cleaned the walls. I didn't want Ella to see these. I was afraid it would affect her pregnancy, especially since she got so stressed last night. The next few days, I was on the lookout for more of these strange happenings. The tapping sound at night persisted, and I slept beside Ella to make her feel safe, so she could rest. I ended up not getting enough sleep. I was extremely bothered with the blood stains and the continuous tapping at night. I tried checking if there were bird nests on the roof, but I don't think there was anything there. Sometimes, while Ella was sleeping soundly, doors would slam inside the house. There weren't any gusts of wind, and I don't make it a habit to leave doors open. One day, I was weeding out Ella's daffodils, and I saw the same blood smears on the walls right by the porch. All of these instances were classic signs that the house was haunted, which was weird, because in all the years that I've been coming back to this house, we've never had these experiences with the supernatural. But who knows, maybe something revealed itself in the years that I was too busy to hang out in this house. I texted Ella's husband to ask him if this was a common occurrence. He said it wasn't, and he immediately asked if everything was okay. So I told him about what's been happening lately, and warned him that I haven't discussed this to Ella so she won't get stressed out. His reply to my narration worried me. Call me when Ella's in the shower. I need to tell you something. As soon as Ella stepped in the shower, I called him via Skype. He immediately launched into a panicked story. Okay, Patty, Ella's gonna be in the shower for around 30 minutes, so we've got time to discuss this. But I gotta tell you, what's happening at the house right now is troubling. That tapping sound that you hear is not a good sign at all. The fact that you are seeing blood smears and strange things are happening inside the house means that the entity is really set on entering the house and getting to Ella. This is gonna sound extremely strange, Patty, but you have to believe me. I didn't believe in this too, but this is chillingly accurate to the stories that I've heard. I was worried at the urgency of his voice. You're really scaring me, what is this about? He blew out air worriedly, and proceeded with his story. You see, in my home country, we have quite a lot of urban tales. I'm sure every culture has it. Stories of entities, elements that reside among us. There is one popular entity that many of our elders believe in. It is called the TIK TIK. The TIK TIK preys on pregnant women. It announces its arrival with an incessant tapping sound. You've been hearing this tapping sound more frequently, right? Yes, it's been happening more frequently and it's keeping me up all night, I said, a growing sense of foreboding filling me. Don't freak out, Patty. The tapping that you hear is its attempt to get inside the house. You probably noticed that the tapping sound is coming from the ceiling, yes? He asked me. I nodded, then realized he couldn't see me, so I grunted a yes, not trusting my voice anymore. That's because it is tapping its way into the ceiling. The longer you allow this tapping, it will eventually tap a hole into the ceiling, and a needle-like apparatus will drop down from the ceiling, slowly, straight into the belly of the pregnant woman. Once it reaches the belly, it will suck the baby out of the tummy, and it will finally be satiated. The pregnant woman wakes up with her stomach shredded and bloody, and she'll lose her baby forever, he finished in a rush. This was such an unbelievable story, but all the details seemed to match with what I was going through. This is insane, how can this be happening? I asked. I know, Patty, I never used to believe these folk tales. After all, we always just saw them as old wives' tales, originating from the provinces. I always used to think that they were just attempts to explain a miscarriage, but what you've told me chilled me to the bones. This isn't good, Patty. You have to protect Ella from this monster. I could sense the panic in his voice. Tom was one of the most rational guys I've ever met, and he's the last person I'd ever think to believe in these things. What he was telling me, this urban legend from his hometown, the Philippines, it sounded so impossible, but he was so convinced. He was really spooked. We hurriedly ended our conversation, with Tom promising to ask his parents how to fight this TIK TIK. But in the meantime, I had to be with Ella at all times, whether I was skeptical about this thing or not, it wouldn't hurt to be extra safe. For 2 straight weeks, I didn't sleep a wink at night. The tapping sounds got louder, and I tried my best to mask the sound so Ella wouldn't hear it. I stared at the ceiling, waiting if a needle-like thing would descend from it. Ella kept asking me why I looked so exhausted every day, and I kept on dodging her questions. Tom messaged me to tell me to surreptitiously leave garlic by the roof, and I had to make an excuse to climb up and repair something. I felt increasingly guilty for keeping this from Ella, and I was this close to breaking down and telling her everything. But all that changed one afternoon when Ella went into labor. She was a week or 2 early, but we were prepared for it. I rushed her to the hospital and she gave birth to a beautiful baby girl. Tom was still stuck at work during the delivery, but I made sure he was there via Skype. They named her Amanda. While Ella was resting, I called Tom and asked if the thread with the TIK TIK was over, and he said that as far as he knew, the tick-tick only craved for unborn babies, so it seemed that we had survived it. I was beyond relieved. Once we all came home from the hospital, I was back to my old self. Sure, I hardly slept in the hospital, while taking care of Ella while she recuperated, but at least I didn't have the tick-tick to worry about anymore. I was extremely excited to spend a long night sleeping and resting. Ella was over the moon with baby Amanda. I saw her cooing at her in the nursery and I smiled. All was right in the world. She looked so happy. I didn't want to disturb her, but I gently knocked on the door to the nursery. "Hey Ella, I think I'm finally ready to crash. I'm so exhausted." Ella smiled and gave me a hug. "You have been looking pretty tired lately, Patty. Thanks for being with me through all this. Please get some sleep, I'll be okay with this snuggle bunny." I smiled at Ella and Amanda again, and went to my room to sleep. It was the first time that I slept in this bed without Ella, and without any worries, so I found myself dozing off in a deep sleep. From far away, I thought I heard a faint tapping sound, but I figured it was just my imagination, after weeks of listening for it. I fell into a deep, exhausted sleep. I woke up with a start. My head was throbbing, my mouth was dry, I felt like vomiting. I brushed my hair from my face and saw that my fingers had blood in them. I startled. What the hell, was it the time of the month? Come to think of it, I don't think I've had my period in a while. I felt woozy. I tried to stand to go to the bathroom and check. I sat up and felt a blinding pain in my stomach. I looked down and screamed. My stomach was bloody and it looked like it was slashed open with long, sharp needles. Blood was pouring out of the wounds and I kept screaming. I looked up at the ceiling, and there, I saw a puncture hole and smears of blood. I passed out. I'm writing this now in the hospital where Ella took me, immediately after hearing my screams. The doctors said I was 3 months pregnant. I didn't even know that I was pregnant. I lost the baby. The damage to my womb was severe. They cannot explain what happened. They are saying I can never have children again. I cried for days. I couldn't believe it. The tick-tick was after my baby all this time.